You actually thought 5 months was enough time to replace me, Julian? Take a good look at the screen. Does she know you promised her the same diamond I'm wearing right now? The room went deathly silent. My white silk dress felt like armor as I watched my fiancé turn as pale as his own lies. I'm Anna, and today's story is a brutal reminder that a woman's intuition is a weapon you should never underestimate. I spent 150 days trapped in a foreign country, counting the seconds until I could see the man I loved, only to find out he spent those same seconds auditioning my replacement. Before we dive into how I turned our dream wedding into his public execution, please subscribe to the channel and join our community of survivors. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening to this story from today? Drop your city in the comments. I read every single one. Now, let's talk about the night I found the archived chats Julian thought he had deleted. It was supposed to be the golden summer, the kind of vacation you see in luxury travel magazines. Julian and I had been engaged for 6 months, and this trip to Europe was his grand gesture to celebrate our future. We were in a small, picturesque town on the coast, sipping wine and talking about baby names, when the dream turned into a living nightmare. A bureaucratic nightmare, to be exact. Due to a catastrophic misunderstanding involving a lost passport and a clerical error at the local border office, we were both detained for questioning. I remember the cold, sterile walls of that holding room and the way the fluorescent lights flickered. I was terrified, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my water glass. But Julian, he was different. While I was spiraling into a panic attack, he was calculating. 3 days into our detention, the news came. Julian's paperwork had been cleared. He was free to go. But because my ID was flagged in a system error, I was told I had to stay behind for further investigation. The local authorities estimated it would take a week, maybe 2. I'll never forget our final moments in that gray hallway. Julian grabbed my shoulders, his eyes glistening with what I thought were tears of pure agony. "Anna, look at me," he whispered, his voice cracking perfectly. "I'm going back to New York to hire the most expensive lawyers money can buy. I'm going to call the embassy, the senators, anyone who will listen. I won't sleep, I won't eat, and I won't breathe properly until you are back in my arms. You are my world, and I'm going to save you." He kissed me with such intensity that I felt it in my soul. I watched his back as he walked toward the exit, believing I was the luckiest woman on earth to have a man so devoted, so fiercely protective. I stayed in that foreign country, isolated by a language barrier and trapped in a legal web for 5 long, grueling months. 5 months of cold meals and staring at the same 4 walls. I wrote him letters every day. I replayed his voice in my head like a mantra. I survived on the hope that back in America, my knight in shining armor was moving mountains for me. I imagined him pacing our living room, haggard and exhausted from fighting for my freedom. I pictured him looking at my empty pillow and crying himself to sleep. But the reality? The reality was that as soon as Julian's plane touched down at JFK, he didn't call a lawyer. He didn't call the embassy. Instead, he pulled out his phone, opened a dating app, and updated his bio to single, successful, and looking for someone to enjoy the city with. While I was counting the cracks in the ceiling of my room abroad, Julian was counting the number of drinks he could buy for the women he was bringing back to our bed. He didn't just leave me in that country, he erased me the moment he crossed the Atlantic. When I finally touched down at JFK after 150 days of legal limbo, the air smelled like freedom, but my gut felt like lead. Julian was there at the terminal, holding a massive bouquet of lilies, my favorite, and wearing a tailored suit that looked far too expensive for a man who was supposed to be distraught by his fiancée's absence. He swept me off my feet, spinning me around as if the last 5 months had been a mere weekend apart. "I never stopped fighting for you, Anna," he whispered into my ear, his voice smooth as silk. "Every day was a battle. I'm just glad the nightmare is over." But the nightmare wasn't over. It was just changing shape. The first week back was a blur of expensive dinners and celebration parties. My parents and his parents were ecstatic. They had already booked a venue for a massive wedding in just 3 weeks. Julian was pushing for it harder than anyone. He claimed he wanted to make up for lost time and lock me down before anything else could happen. But something was off. The man I left was warm and present. The man I came home to was a hollow shell, performing the role of a devoted fiancé for an audience. It started with the phone. In the past, Julian would leave his phone face up on the kitchen counter. Now it was a permanent extension of his hand. It was always face down. He took it into the bathroom. He took it to the gym. He even slept with it tucked under his pillow. Whenever a notification pinged, he didn't just look at it, he guarded it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night. Julian had passed out early after a few glasses of scotch, celebrating a big promotion he supposedly earned while I was away. His phone slid from under his pillow and hit the carpet with a soft thud. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would shatter. I knew I shouldn't. I knew trust was the foundation of marriage. But the 150 days of silence from him while I was abroad screamed louder than my conscience. I picked it up. The screen glowed, illuminating the room. He hadn't changed his passcode. It was still my birthday. 0522. I didn't find what I expected. I found something much worse. I went straight to his archived chats on WhatsApp, and the sheer volume of names made my head spin. Sarah, Chloe, Elena, Madison, and someone just labeled the one. I scrolled back to the date he arrived in New York 5 months ago. The very first night, the night he told me he was crying himself to sleep, he had messaged Sarah. She's stuck over there for months. Finally, some peace and quiet. Are you free tonight? The bed feels too big without someone in it. My hands were shaking so violently, I almost dropped the device. I spent the next 3 hours in the bathroom, sitting on the cold tile floor, scrolling through a digital museum of his betrayals. He hadn't just dated. He had lived entire lifetimes with these women. He took Elena to our favorite steakhouse. He told Madison he was finally single after a toxic breakup. And the worst part? 2 days before my release was confirmed, he told the one that he was planning a business trip to Europe to clear his head and wanted her to come along. He didn't hire lawyers. He didn't call senators. He used the tragedy of my detention as a tragic backstory to gain sympathy from women he met on apps. He was a predator who used my suffering as his opening line. As the sun began to peek through the curtains, I looked at Julian sleeping peacefully in our bed. He looked like the man I loved, but I knew now he was just a stranger wearing a Julian mask. I could have screamed. I could have packed my bags and left. But as I looked at the "Save the Date" card on the nightstand, a cold, sharp clarity washed over me. Leaving him wasn't enough. He wanted a perfect wedding to cement his image as the hero who waited for his bride. Fine. I would give him the wedding of a lifetime. I would give him a day that the entire city of New York would never forget. The morning of the wedding was eerily calm. My bridesmaids were buzzing around me, pinning lace and spraying perfume, calling me the strongest woman they knew for surviving those 5 months abroad. I just smiled. They thought I was glowing because of love. They didn't realize it was the cold, hard radiation of a woman who had already burnt her bridges. Julian was waiting at the end of the aisle in a charcoal tuxedo, looking every bit the loyal hero the guests believed him to be. As I walked toward him, the room was filled with soft music and the scent of expensive peonies. He took my hand, his palm slightly sweaty, and whispered, "We finally made it, Anna. No more distance." I looked him dead in the eye and smiled. "No more distance, Julian. Only the truth." The ceremony proceeded until it was time for the tribute video, a tradition in our circle where we show photos of our journey. The lights dimmed, the guests settled in with their glasses of champagne, expecting to see sunset photos from our European trip. Instead, the massive 20-foot LED screen flickered to life with a giant screenshot of a Tinder profile. The music stopped. A collective gasp rippled through the pews. It wasn't a photo of us. It was a photo of Julian, taken in our bedroom while I was in a detention cell, with the caption, "Finally free from a toxic ex, looking for something real." Then came the scrolling screenshots of his archived chats. The dates were highlighted in bright red: June 14th, July 22nd, August 5th, the exact days I had called him crying, terrified for my safety, while he was busy telling Madison that he couldn't wait to see her in that black dress. The screen shifted to a series of bank statements, hotel bookings and jewelry purchases made with our joint house fund while I was away. Then, the final blow, a voice memo he had sent to the one, laughing about how he was going to marry me just to keep my father's business connections, but that she would always be his secret getaway. The silence in the church was deafening, broken only by the sound of Julian's mother dropping her glass. Julian turned to the tech booth, screaming for them to shut it off, but I had paid the technician double to ensure that video played until the very last second. I turned to the crowd, my voice amplified by the microphone on my lapel. Julian told you all he spent 5 months fighting for me. The only thing he was fighting was his own boredom by filling my spot in our bed with 5 different women. I looked at him, his face now a sickly shade of gray. You didn't wait for me, Julian. You replaced me. And now I'm replacing this wedding with a public service announcement. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply unhooked the diamond necklace he had given me, bought with my own money, as the bank statements showed, and let it fall to the floor. The engagement is off. The house is being sold. And Julian? My father pulled his investment from your firm 10 minutes ago. You aren't a husband. You're a ghost. I walked back down the aisle, my white train trailing behind me like a victory flag. By the time I reached the doors, the aftermath had already begun. Because Julian's betrayal was so public and so vile, the video was already being uploaded to social media by the guests. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was more absolute than I could have imagined. Because the wedding reveal went viral, Julian didn't just lose a fiancé, he lost his identity. In the digital age, a reputation is currency, and Julian was suddenly bankrupt. His firm, terrified of the PR nightmare, issued a cold, 2-sentence press release announcing his immediate termination. They cited incompatibility with corporate values, but everyone knew the truth. Nobody wants to do business with a man who can't even be loyal to the woman he promised to save. But the real sting came from his own roster. When those 5 women saw the video, when they realized they were all being told the same lies, promised the same future, and used as pawns in his sick game, they did something Julian never expected. They united. They shared their stories online, exposing his manipulative tactics and his fake sob story about his trapped fiancé. He went from being a charming bachelor to a cautionary tale. He wasn't a player. He was just a joke. I watched from a distance as he lost his luxury apartment, the one my father had helped him secure. I watched as he moved into a cramped studio on the outskirts of the city, his high-flying lifestyle replaced by the reality of a man with no bridges left to cross. He sent me an email, since his number was finally blocked, filled with 2,000 words of excuses. He claimed the trauma of me being away broke his mind. He claimed he was searching for me in other people. I didn't reply. I simply deleted it. Silence is the loudest thing you can say to a narcissist. As for me, people asked if I was heartbroken. Honestly, I felt lighter than I had in years. The 150 days I spent in that foreign country were a test of my survival, but the 150 days I would have spent married to a liar would have been a life sentence. I took the refund from the honeymoon and spent a month in Bali, this time on my own terms. I learned that being alone is 1,000 times better than being with someone who makes you feel lonely. I realized that Julian didn't break me. He just cleared the space for the woman I was meant to become. I'm no longer the girl waiting to be saved in a holding cell. I'm the woman who saved herself from a lifetime of deception. To everyone watching this, if you're currently in a situation where your gut is screaming that something is wrong, listen to it. Don't let someone call you crazy or insecure when you're actually just observant. Julian thought my absence was his opportunity, but it was actually his undoing. He thought he was playing me, but he was only playing himself. Remember, a man who treats your suffering as a chance to cheat isn't a partner. He's a parasite. You are worth more than archived chats and hidden phones. You are worth a love that stays loud and clear, whether you are in the same room or 1,000 miles apart. Never be afraid to set the altar on fire if it's the only way to see the truth. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If Anna's strength inspired you today, Give this video a thumbs up and share your own turning point story in the comments. We are a community that grows through truth, and I'm so glad you're part of it. Stay strong, stay radiant, and I'll see you in the next story.